What then is the third component of personality, which you call our ideogenic selves?
Back to Kelly again. Um, George Kelly argued that we need to understand the individual and her own personal constructs. And these cannot be reduced down to other people's constructs. We need to approach an individual whose personality we're trying to understand as a co-scientist, as a scientist, trying to make sense of her world through the personal constructs that she creates to apprehend, anticipate, and act upon the world. I expanded Kelly's work to basically using that science metaphor to suggest that each of us is not a scientist so much as a specialist. And that you can take, and here it gets into mereology again, it gets into subdivisions of important elements that need to be plumbed further and further down. And it eventuated in project analytic theory. But the starting notion was that we enter into domains in our lives where we simultaneously develop greater frequency of interaction with the domain, which leads to greater positive affect, which leads to greater cognitive complexity in a domain. And so this is what I call a specialization loop. And I was fascinated, this is when I was in my years at Oxford, with the research that was looking at the basic ontology of persons and things as primary objects. And I believe that we could look at specialization in people, specialization in things as the differentiation, the basic extroversion. Assume that we had a homogeneous environment, that it doesn't matter whether you're attracted to, stimulated by persons or things. I started to make that differentiation. So there's a whole area of my research that took maybe 10 years on specialization theory that eventually led to saying, no, we're still asking them questions like trait psychologists. We're still saying, do you like to be with other people? Do you like to observe the path of a meteor through a telescope to get your person-thing orientation? And then it dawned on us that basically they should be telling us what interests them. And that ideogenic, that is, the elements that we're studying are elicited from, elucidated by the person we're trying to understand. And that led to asking individuals sort of basically the equivalent, hey, what's up? What you doing? And how's it going? And the degree of isomorphism with how we act as humans in our everyday lives was appealing to me. If you can, I should tell you this story because it illustrates why it matters to me so much. When I used to lecture, I don't know whether I mentioned this earlier. Did I mention in my lectures, people would come around before the lecture and I'd say, how's it going? And they say, okay. Now, well, you know what it's like. You're in a class, people arrive 10 minutes early. Some of them, they're sitting around. I come in and I say, hey, how you doing? And they say, fine. Next day I'd say, hey, how you doing? They say, fine. And that went on for about 4 days. And then one day, I don't know, something just got to me that made me say to a small group of them, no, really, how are you doing? And they knew it wasn't idle chatter because some of them looked pretty beat up. And, how's it going? And it seemed to change everything. That small group, one of them, their boyfriend had decided to go to Stanford and leave Harvard, and another one is divorced. So that student had a project of figuring out what went wrong with the person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and then somebody else's project relating to getting over my parents' divorce. It came out of the blue. I hadn't a clue. They waited until I got away, and all of a sudden, whang. The whole panoply of pursuits, projects that define what people are actually doing in their lives, the frustrations they experience, the joy they experience with them. We move swiftly from how's it going? I think you're not looking that happy today, to expressions of joy, saying, "Oh, that was great on the midterm. How are you doing? Great." Does that matter to you? Of course it matters to me. And, a lot of this is playful banter, Robinson. It's not, well, tell me about your projects. It's not this sort of almost psychoanalytic, I want to hear you. It's more, hey, I really want to hear you. And that difference in tone from almost judgmental intrusion to gentle evocation, I think, is what leads to people to start talking about things that really matter to them. So the ideogenic is the systematic study of those kind of elements that can only be elicited by direct appeal to the person whose personality you're trying to study. Personal construct theory uses an ideogenic approach. Narrative psychology uses an ideogenic approach. Tell me your life story. Projects and narratives are very closely linked in some ways. But both, they share this ideogenic focus, and certainly personal project is a quintessentially ideographic approach to personality.
Well, just totally offhandedly, you mentioned Mariology a couple of times. One of my mentors and professors at Columbia, his name is Achille Varzi. He's probably the leading Mariologist in the world, and we had I think it's around episode 97. It's a 4-hour-long Mariology episode. If people want to listen to that,
I am blown away. I know his work, actually.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he did a whole article on Nietzsche's, not Nietzsche, but on the niche.
Yeah, I'm sure.
As an instantiation of what a meteorological view of embeddedness and so on is. Isn't that cool? Yeah, he did it with a fellow, to be fair, at Buffalo, who shared that article with him. But it's fabulous work.